Hello, my soccer universe. My name is Roland and this is Football Talk. And in today's episode, we're talking about pretty much the perfect weekend for me. Both of my favorites team won. Both of them did so in more or less impressive fashion. Both of them scored at least 2 goals and none of them conceded a goal. So what can I wish more? Yes, I can wish for more that we have derbies on the same weekend and they win both the derbies, or win a trophy on the same day or the same weekend. But as far as weekends go, this was as perfect as it could be. And I'm therefore happy wearing a golden Milan jersey for the golden weekend. But for me, it was honestly all about the LASK win in the derby in Linz. But I also have to say, this felt like the first big footballing weekend of the season. We had some pretty big name clashes in the Premier League, in the Eredivisie, and also in France. So this always kind of raises my attention to what is going on. And yes, there was also a teeny little derby in Italy that we definitely also have to talk about. So plenty of stuff in this episode that I hope I get out by Tuesday evening, but with my internet connection at the moment, nothing is really sure. Let's see all about that. But let's get started. Well, LASK's win in the derby capped off a picture-perfect weekend for me. What a great weekend it was. And it was definitely the emotional highlight for me. There is no doubt about that. There was huge scenes off the pitch, in the stands, nice tifos from the LASK fans. Even the one from Blau-Weiß was not that bad, actually, and both of them hit a chord with me as well. But of course, I will say that the LASK tifo was the better one. It was definitely the classier one, I gotta say. Class, though, was not shown on the pitch. I mean, it was a game best described as LASK boring Blau-Weiß to tears. Blau-Weiß did have the disadvantage of having had 2 injury-related substitutions already in the first half, with newly acquired star striker Sean Weissman being among those, and that will have a little bit of an impact on further rounds because I think he will be out for a while. It's either a collarbone or something with the shoulder. At the time of shooting this, it's not quite clear. But still, at this time, LASK already had control of this game. However, when they needed to shoot, they passed. When they needed to pass, they shot. Had plenty of possession, but barely any chances. And it really became awful in the second half when you had the chance to break quickly and no, you keep it slow. And I know confidence after 5 losses in 6 games is not high. You want to keep the ball. You don't want to make, again, stupid mistakes like you did against the Ried and so on. You want to secure the ball. And afterwards, the coach admitted, our task was to really tire out the opponent, and we would bring on 2 fast players in Christoph Lang and Krzysztof Daniek, and they both then ended up scoring. And it was Lang who broke the deadlock in the 86th minute when he just took the ball, and for once the Blau-Weiß defense were just moving over but giving him plenty of space in a really nicely taken shot. It's 1-0 LASK, 86th minute. I cannot tell you how much I celebrate this goal with my little daughter, especially also with the other ones, but my older daughter was kind of looking a little bit skeptically to me, but the little one, we just hugged it out and yelled at each other from excitement. And then she afterwards told me, I've never been so alive. It was one of my moments of the weekend, I definitely gotta say. And so yeah, then there was really not much chances from Blau-Weiß Linz. I mean, they had a big one after 8 seconds, and they had one around the 75th minute with a free header by Andersen. That was that. LASK also didn't produce that much, but at least they had a few more shots on goal. 75% of the ball. I mean, this is absolutely crazy. But this was Guardiola's football of the worst kind in a way, that bores you to tears. But once it hit well. And then goalie Bayev of Blau-Weiß in stoppage time, got the ball somewhere, didn't know where it was, and Daniek had an easy task to put it into the net. So that was the win in the derby. It was the best visited game, and that's for 11th against 10th. And now roles are flipped. LASK is now 6 points, 2 points ahead of Blau-Weiß Linz. It's still not a great season, but maybe, just maybe this might be the spark. It gives a little bit more confidence, and we might see something. Although the upcoming games are not easy ones. Not big name opponents, but tricky opponents in Wolfsburg away and Hartberg at home. The remaining games, I think, refereeing controversy. I think in almost every single one of them. We had Austria Vienna being 2-0 down at the halftime to Ried. 2 goals by Mutandro, especially the second one, where Dragovic really bad back pass then. Schein Radlinger in goal, didn't know what to do with the ball. It seems like he's clearing it, and then from behind, Mutandro gets the ball and lobs it over the goalie into the empty net. An absolute slapstick goal. However, credit where credit's due. Austria fight back, get a goal back by Bari relatively early on, and then a very contentious penalty that wasn't even looked at VAR, that Eggestein converts, and then Manfred Fischer a little bit later gets the winning goal. As soon as the penalty went in, I really thought that Austria have now the upper hand. Ried really had a hard time converting that one. Hartberg against Wolfsburg. Wolfsburg really threw that one away. This was the last home game for Hartberg in their home, away from home, just south of Vienna. Very few spectators as well. Wolfsburg took twice the lead, but then there was a rather contentious penalty, and was it not? This was not so a contentious battle, but it was the contention came from fouls being given and many yellow cards, especially referee Weinberger and coach Kübauer are never going to be friends again, and Kübauer really went at him afterwards. Maybe the Salzburg Sturm game, not so much of a controversy because it was really then conditioned by the early red card to Diabate. That really allowed Sturm Graz to take over. Salzburg absolutely flat. Score before the half through Horvath, after the half through Jatta. Maurice Malone was involved in the first half in a goal that has been disallowed because there was hand, that was alright. And then also assisting Jatta, and he was the one fouled, really roughly fouled by Diabate. That was a well-deserved red card. Plenty of controversy between Altach and Tirol, where Tirol coach, or WSG coach, I should say, Semlich really went off on the referee. They had the opening goal disallowed by Böckle because seemingly in the air he went too much with his shoulder against the defender, Ingolic. Honestly, this was absolutely nothing in there. This goal should have stood, and the penalty was given against them. I think we cannot argue with them, but it was then saved by the WSG goalie. It was Müller then who scores his 5th goal of the season to give WSG a little bit against the run of play the lead. Ristic late on gets the equalizer, but it felt like that Altach is overall the better team. But again, refereeing did not favor WSG. We already talked about the derby, and then we had GRK taking on Rapid. Rapid taking a lead through Antist, and I gotta say, Rapid were overall the better team. Had a great chance by Mbui, who missed an open net. They are taking the ball out of the air, but still was not was probably harder to pull it over the bar than into the net. In any case, it's a late penalty then that was converted by Maderna, and that penalty foul, I mean, that was an invented penalty, as they say in Italy. I say as much. It is points drop for Rapid, who still sit very comfortably on top of the table. However, Sturm behind them have a game in hand, so it might actually be tighter than the table might suggest at the moment. Still, Rapid at the moment seem to be like the best team in Austria. Maybe Sturm has to say something there as well. But watch out for Austria Vienna, who have now 3 wins in a row after they have been in such disarray to start the season. It very much looks like last season. Well, let's start the Italian portion of this podcast with Milan's 3-0 away win at Udinese. A rather impressive win, I gotta say. And it really shows that Allegri's tactic of having 5 midfielders is really paying off, because you're completely bossing the middle of the park. And so even if you have defensive frailties or offensive frailties, I mean, Jimenez missing a pretty big chance in the first half. It doesn't really show, and it actually works quite well. And then you have 2 really seasoned veterans in there with Rabiot, who played actually pretty well, and Modric, who also again played pretty good, although the one pass where I really thought, oh, show me, Luca, what you can do, he then misplaced a little bit. But overall, this was a really good performance, and probably the only downside is really that Santi Jimenez is off. He's unfortunately off, and that is actually sad for me to see. I think he's working hard to get himself in positions, but his finishing, he's just lacking the touch, and you could then even see in the second half that the players are not even looking for him anymore. Not a good sign. But let's talk about the positive. Christian Pulisic. I mean, the opening goal was, he initiated himself. He goes out to Estupinian, whose cross is then, I think, sort of saved by the Udinese goalkeeper right onto Pulisic, who makes it 1-0 in the 40th minute. From that moment on, there was no coming back. Right after half, he there was a clear penalty foul on him, but he gets the ball off the defender of Udine. He is fouled, but then it falls to Fofana, who just for once puts it low into the corner. And 46th minute, the game is done and dusted. And then he himself, after a nice Rabiot assist, takes the shot. There was Santi Jimenez in the middle, but you could see he was only thinking goal, and it was not an easy shot. Goalie probably didn't look good either, but it's 3-0, and he had 3 goal involvements. Pulisic, I think since he joined Milan, only Lautaro Martinez has more goals in Serie A. And he's not seen as a star. For me, he is always among the best players for Milan. Even this rotten season last season, he was probably Milan's best player together with Tijani Reinders. Reinders earned himself a move to City. More on that a little bit later in this episode. But I think a very resounding win. And can I also say, this is where you wear your third jersey. You had Udinese black with some white, so both the home and the away jersey won't do. This is where you wear the third jersey. Not in a home game against Bologna. But there was another offender in Serie A this weekend regarding that. Well, let's look at the other scores in Italy on the past weekend. Cagliari get another pretty huge win, a 2-1 away win at Lecce, meaning they're already looking at safety. But what was most remarkable is that it was Andrea Bellotti who scored a brace for Cagliari. The winning goal in the 71st minute comes from a penalty. Penalty also gives then Bologna a late win over Genoa, thanks to a penalty by Orsolini. There was also a great save by Skorupsi. Also Bologna coming back to get that win. Juventus, rather flat performance, however, definitely not a game that Tudor will be looking very happy at. They take the lead through Conceição, but other than that, really not good. But Gift Orban probably should have been sent off with an elbow to the face. It was only a yellow card, it was not given as a red card. And then the penalty also that gives Verona the equalizer was also a rather contentious one. Gift Orban scoring that one for them. But they could have lost that one. Verona were not that bad, so Juventus, I understand. It was a hard week, You had 2 pretty tough games where you conceded tons of goals, but you actually got 4 points out of them. So maybe not so much, but it also seems like that Juve seems already a little bit laggy. Let's see how this will be going forward. Then, of course, the big Rome derby. Early on, I thought that Lazio had the better chances, and then a little bit out of nowhere, Sule found Lorenzo Pellegrini, who puts it into net in 30th minute, and shortly thereafter it could have been even 2. I think overall, the game was a rather level affair, and a draw would have probably been the fair result, but a huge win for Roma, who had kind of a so-and-so start to the season, and for Lazio already the Vultures a little bit circling. I was about to use a German word there. I should say the Eagle, but this is the Vultures. There's not a good feeling around the club, and the fans definitely want Lotito to be gone already. Then we had also a 0-0 between Cremonese and Parma, almost no chances there. Atalanta get a huge 3-0 away win at Torino, so consolidating themselves in the table. Fiorentina had a 1-0 lead, however lose 2-1 at home to Como with a late goal. And it's already Pioli. The Pioli project is being under heavy scrutiny. The Fiorentina fans not happy. I also should say that Torino fans are protesting their owner. So rather interesting times. Inter at least bounced back with a 2-1 win over Sassuolo, but it was not that easy either. Di Marco, and then was an own goal that gave them in the 81st minute the 2-0 lead. Chedira a little bit thereafter gets one back, and there were some good saves in there from the Inter goalie as well. But overall, I would say Inter have deserved that win. But why are we playing again in the third jersey at home? This did not look like Inter. It just doesn't look right. And the Sassuolo jersey was also one of the worst I've seen this season. So an absolutely awful, dreadful match to watch, to be honest. And then on Monday evening, Napoli played Pisa in a pleasing jersey matchup, I gotta say, and had a really hard time against Pisa. Early on there was a penalty called back because there was somewhat a hand play that was a little bit off. Would have been for Pisa. Then there were chances. There was a goal disallowed, I think, for Elmas. for Napoli because there was Højlund in offside, but then they get the go-ahead goal through Gilmore, assisted by Spinazzola. However, there was also potentially a foul in the build-up as well. But Napoli had a really hard time against Pisa. Pisa under Gilardino showing actually quite good form early on in the season. Pisa getting the equalizer from the penalty spot through Nzola, but Spinazzola just 30 minutes later, 73rd minute, makes it 2-1, and when Lorenzo Lucca with a thundering shot in the 82nd minute made it 3-1, the 3 points were with Napoli. And not that fast, Laurent pulls again one back, and it was really then nervy. Pisa could have snatched a point there, but Napoli stay perfect in the table. And so ahead of the next weekend, where we have the big Milan-Napoli clash, Napoli are still perfect on top of the table. However, Milan are sitting behind. Juventus have dropped points for the first time. We have to see where it goes. We also have Juventus going to Atalanta. So also really, really interesting. But in the midweek, we also have Coppa Italia. As I said, Milan is playing there as well against Lecce, this time at home. They just beat them a couple of weeks ago. So we gotta see. But definitely interesting stuff happening in Serie A. It seems to become a rather exciting season, I gotta say. We also had pretty much a marquee weekend in the Eredivisie with two really big clashes happening on Sunday. However, both of them ended in a draw, so we are staying pretty much where we were ahead of this weekend. Feyenoord really missed a big trick there. If you're watching this on YouTube, you probably have seen a Twente jersey in the background hanging. There's a 5-1 win at Sparta Rotterdam, a rather impressive one. And I'm wearing Heerenveen, who got a 3-2 over Nijmegen. So those were the two outstanding performers according to my model. But let's talk about the two big games. PSV took on Ajax, largely controlled that game, but Ajax were always hard to fight back. I mean, Sabari gave PSV the early lead in 7th minute. Then there were a couple of chances when Kenneth Taylor converts a penalty for Ajax. It more or less came a little bit out of nowhere. Can I also jersey matchup? Those Ajax jerseys look actually really, really nice. I'm not sure if they're as nice as the one away jersey there was on the Corona times that I have, but I actually do like this quite some. The game then a little bit leveled out. Oskar Gloch, former Bundesliga star, Austrian Bundesliga star, came on for Ajax at halftime. However, PSV then earned themselves the lead through Gaziorowski in the 81st minute, and then you think they might hang on to three very important points. Remember, it was these two that were fighting for the title that Ajax threw away last season. We should not forget that, because Ajax actually did well against PSV, I think winning twice. And Ajax again gets something out of Eindhoven with Taylor assisting Oskar Gloch, who with a nice shot in the 80th minute gets the equalizer. And that would have opened out the door for Feyenoord with a win at AZ to actually extend their lead on top of the table. They have the lead after winning in the midweek and have only won so far. However, they had a really hard time. Were twice down to an AZ team that was really working them hard. In the 51st minute, Casius actually gives them 2-1 lead. Bosch in the 56th equalizes immediately, and Hachimus in the 78th gave Feyenoord the go-ahead goal. However, Ahmed Hodzic is then sent off for a second yellow card. Feyenoord hanging back and then give away a stupid penalty that Merdin converts deep in stoppage time, and so Feyenoord drop points for the first time this season. It was also a marquee weekend in the Premier League with three big games, the first one of which was, of course, the Merseyside derby between Liverpool and Everton. Liverpool had a 2-0 lead through Gravenberg. What a wonderful goal. This was a striker's goal by him, assist by Salah, and then he also assists the second goal through Etikete in the 29th minute. And you thought Liverpool are off and running, but Liverpool have a tendency to squander 2-0 leads, and so it is Gay who pulls one back in the 58th minute. However, Liverpool do hang on for important 3 points, and they are still perfect, although they look anything but perfect at this very moment. We also had Brighton take a 2-0 lead over Spurs at home. Minte and Ajari scoring. However, Richarlison pulls one back in the 43rd minute, and then it's an own by Van Hecke late on that earns Spurs the draw, a well-deserved point, I gotta say. Spurs also remaining more or less top of the table, looking not that badly, to be honest. Crystal Palace continued their good run with a 2-1 away win at West Ham. Crystal Palace are sitting in 5th spot at the moment. Oliver Glasner doing a real great job despite, again, losing probably his best player, Mateta, and Mitchell scoring the 2 goals. And for West Ham, they are sitting now very much towards the bottom of the table. I think the time has come for Graham Potter to be released of his duty. We also had Leeds getting a 3-1 away win at Wolves, a promoted team that actually might survive. Wolves is a team that is also very much in relegation trouble. But then all eyes were on a classic from the 90s, I would say, between United and Chelsea. And it was really conditioned by Robert Sanchez's early red card in the 5th minute, completely needlessly taking down Mbomo. And from that moment on, it was only United that were playing. Bruno Fernandes gives them a lead in the 14th minute. Casemiro doubles up in 37. There were plenty of chances. This could have gotten really out of hand to the point where I thought, yeah, it's in driving rain, it's the great weather. But on the other side, is this really worth watching? Well, just before halftime, Casemiro concedes a second yellow card. So things are level again. But Chelsea really take a hard time to get it going for them and only can muster a consolation goal very late on. So United with a huge win, although you cannot really say anything about them after that one. That game was just too weird, to be honest. And then all eyes were, of course, on the big clash between Arsenal and City. And I was going back and forth, should I watch it? Because most of the time, these games have not been great. But last one time around, Arsenal beat City 5-1, so I thought maybe we'll in for a show. And everyone expected Arsenal to come out storming, however it was City, and especially Erling Haaland, who willed himself for the first goal in the 9th minute. He gets the ball, gets on a darting run, but handed the ball over to Reinders, who runs and finds Haaland again, who with a nice clean strike in the 9th minute gives City the early lead. Then Arsenal got more and more in the game, but really had a hard time breaking down City. And especially in the second half, when Eze come on and Bukayo Saka come on, you see a little bit more guile with Arsenal. But again, difficulty of breaking down City. And City went ultra defensive. Have we ever seen this from a Guardiola side? It was basically Guardiola impersonating Mourinho or saying, I think Arsenal is a better team. We gotta hang on here, and actually they did this really, really, really well. And it was then just late on when Martinelli sees that Donnarumma is a little bit off his line, is not awareness for space, and gets the equalizer. Much celebrated in a game that was really weird to watch. I honestly didn't enjoy it all that much, but it also leaves both teams in the title race, with the big winners being Liverpool, because Liverpool now enjoy a 5-point lead on top of the table and have not even been convincing. The Bundesliga weekend was uncharacteristically characterized by British hat-tricks and penalty saves, record-breaking penalty saves. The first one came by St. Pauli keeper Vasil, who saved the penalty by Angelo Stiller in Stuttgart. However, Stuttgart still ran away a 2-0 winners, but Vasil saved 6 out of his last 7 penalties. However, that was a good record. It's still not the best that we have seen so far. Speaking of British hat-tricks, we had Harry Kane going to Hoffenheim, getting another hat-trick and converting his 17th penalty in a row. That is a record in itself. Gnabry late on kind of spoils a little bit the Harry Kane show, but it was 3 uninterrupted goals, except uninterrupted by the halftime break. So Germans don't count this as a proper hat-trick. Then we had we're going back to the penalty saves, we had Freiburg goalie Owusu saving his 5th penalty in a row. Never done in the Bundesliga. At this point, Freiburg already had a 2-0 lead at Bremen through Grifo penalty and Adamo, and then he saves Romano Schmidt's penalty that would have put Bremen back into the game. However, Freiburg look actually quite good in this shape. We also had a big win for Hamburg, 2-1 over Heidenheim. Remember, Heidenheim once pipped them to the Bundesliga spot when Heidenheim got promoted. We also had Mainz being rather imperious, 4-1 at Augsburg. So it was really entertaining stuff. Köln suffer a first loss, a 3-1 at Leipzig. Per se, not really bad, but Leipzig at least found some form. Then probably the craziest game, and a second British hat-trick came when Union Berlin went to Frankfurt, who had just completely destroyed Galatasaray in the Champions League. And not only destroyed them, they mocked the fans by collecting a lot of Galatasaray fan stuff and burning it in front of their own fans. I mean, this was trolling to the highest degree. But Union Berlin had a 2-1 lead at halftime, Berg scoring the 2-0, and right after Berg 53rd and 56 put the game away 4-1. Yes, Özil and Burkhardt then pulled it back to 3-4. However, Frankfurt this time cannot find an equalizer. It's a Frankfurt team that is a little bit stalling in the Bundesliga at the moment. Leverkusen also not having great, a bad result kind of in Copenhagen, and then only a 1-1 against Gladbach, who scored the first goal of the season. Dortmund, though, stay up there with a 1-0 over Wolfsburg thanks to an Adeyemi goal in the 20th minute. Uncharacteristically, the La Liga weekend ended already on Sunday, and I think it's not because there's a midweek round starting on Tuesday in La Liga, but there's the Balon d'Or, and you know, Spanish teams always think that the Balon d'Or should be theirs. Lamine Yamal didn't win it this time. That went to Ousmane Dembélé. So yeah, that's a little bit of breaking news as well. I don't care about the Ballon d'Or, to be honest. However, a team that cares very much about the Ballon d'Or is Real Madrid. They were not in contention this time around, but they get a 2-0 home win over Espanyol with Eder Militao scoring a screamer. Mbappe adds another one. Assist by Vini Jr., who got a start this time, but was not happy when he was taken off. But this was a convincing performance. I think Xabi Alonso is trying to find, or is already finding some balance for Real Madrid. The weekend got underway with a 3-1 win for Betis over Real Sociedad. We also had the other Seville team getting a win in Sevilla, winning 2-1 at Alaves, and the winning goal scorer was Alexis Sanchez. Yes, that Alexis Sanchez, who actually played not much for Udinese last season. So yeah, interesting stuff for sure. Valencia got a humongous 2-0 home win over Athletic Club, and yes, the goals came late. This was a comeback from being trounced by Barcelona 6-0, but it was also helped that Vivian was sent off in the 61st minute with a straight red card, and Santa Maria and Hugo Duro score 2 after the 70th minute. So about a pretty big 3 points for Valencia. Atletico, though, again lose points even with a man more. Julian Alvarez misses a penalty in the 14th minute. He's actually then replaced in the 62nd with Alexander Sørloth, also a player not really happy. But then Sørloth is sent off, so also getting to a man down. Conor Gallagher in the 79th minute seemingly had given them the win, but then Mourinho in the 85th equalizes. Atleti still not looking right, and the calls to say Simeone goodbye are getting louder and louder, which I honestly, it's a tricky business, definitely tricky business. I have to mention Elche, the promoted team, still unbeaten, beating fellow promoted team Real Oviedo 1-0 at home, so pretty big result there. And Barcelona, of course, second game in a row at the Johan Cruyff Stadium, this time not even sold out, but you know, it was torrential rain. There was a bad weather front going over Europe on this weekend. Ferran Torres scoring in the bad weather the first 2 goals, and then Olmo adding a third one. And Marcus Rashford did not start after his great performance in Newcastle because he was 2 minutes late. Hansi Flick definitely doesn't like that. The bad weather also had a big impact on the round in France. The big match had to be postponed. There was a whole lot of discussion. When will it be held? Because PSG had to go to the Balon d'Or ceremony, and so their clash against Marseille actually did clash with that ceremony, which, yeah, was not making the Parisians happy. At least they got the consolation prize of winning the Balon d'Or. Ousmane Dembélé and their goalie Donnarumma, although he's not their goalie anymore, actually won the Yashin Award. But you know, let's leave the Ballon d'Or at the side. We had pretty big weekend in France with 3 big matches, and of course the biggest of them all in there. We had a Breton derby between Nantes and Rennes. Rennes had a 2-0 halftime lead through Lars and Lapolle. Mwanga pulls one back in the 64th minute in stoppage time. Nantes get a penalty. Ablim cannot convert. However, El Arabi in the 96th minute finds the equalizer. Wild scenes, but it's still a draw between the Breton rivals, although technically Nantes is not in Brittany anymore, but you know, that used to be the case. Speaking of Bretagne, we had Brest getting a 4-1 win over Nice. Nice, although in the Europa League not doing well. Ajorc del Castillo, Jota and Le Beau Lascari scoring the 4 goals for Brest. The other big game outside of Le Classique was of course Lens taking on Lille, completely taking them to the sword. 3-0 win. Saïd Thauvin, one of the World Cup winners from 2018, against the other one, Giroud, who did not do anything, and Fofana scoring the 3 goals. Monaco actually had a hard time against still last place Metz. They were 1-0 down through Diallo. Mika Bireth, formerly from Sturm Graz, gets an equalizer, and then it's the Ansu Fati time. He came out at the halftime, scores the go-ahead goal. Hein then equalized with a penalty, but he gets the winning goal, the 3-2 in the 83rd minute, and an own goal, and Ilan Kena then adds another one to make Monaco a 5-2 winner on that night. And then all eyes were on Marseille. However, the heavy rainfalls didn't help, so the game had to be postponed. It was been played Monday evening. And an early Aguirre goal won it for OM, who in the first half were actually really good, had good chances, could have led to us on. Paris was really flat, or I should say PSG, because there's another Paris now in the league, of course. Paris FC losing 3-2 away at home to Strasbourg. In the second half, yes, there was more chance. It was a pretty good one for PSG in there, but it felt rather unconvincing in the end. OM really deserved the win. Their first home win over PSG in a very, very long time. Wild scenes. And for the first time in a long time, it's not PSG on top of the table anymore, but rather Monaco, thanks to goal difference. Last but not least, we ended in Portugal, where, of course, José Mourinho was confirmed as the new coach of Benfica, and he took charge of the first game of Benfica this weekend already, beating lowly AVS, yes, that's the last place team in the league, with a 3-0 win. Sudakov, Pavlidis and Ivanovic scoring the 3 goals. But it will be the next week where it will be really interesting. Benfica go to Chelsea and he has to go to Porto, his former stomping grounds. I mean, it's really, really a tough week for Benfica and also for Mourinho. Table toppers, Porto also get a 3-0 away win. Rosario, Simon, Velga scoring the 3 goals, and Porto are still perfect this season. The big northern derby between Vitória and Braga ends in a 1-1 draw, both goals being scored in the first half. Oliveira misses a penalty for Vitória just before the half-time break. And also the third big title contender get a 3-0 win. Sporting 3-0 win over Moreirense. The goals came really, really late. Suarez in the 76-minute breaks the deadlock, and Gonçalves another penalty before Ioannidis adds a third. And this ends the review of this really nice weekend for me. As I said, 2 wins for my 2 favorite teams, no goals conceded, more than 1 goal scored each. I cannot be happy, but it was also quite a momentous weekend with all these big games in there. This was entertaining stuff overall. The bad weather also contributed to it. And yes, we had nice weather here in Austria on the weekend, but now it came in. Everything that we saw in France, in England, in Spain came here. Please let me know in the comments below what you thought about everything happening in the leagues that we were covering here, or if you want to add any other results and stories that I might have missed, please drop a line below, give me a thumbs up or a good review if you enjoyed this podcast episode, and also please tell a friend if you did so. In any case, I will talk to you soon about more things in my soccer universe. Bye!